She was 6, and that night still plays in her head like it never ended. Like she's still under that bed, knees pulled to her chest, heart pounding louder than the sirens that never came. The sheets smelled like dust and sweat. Her father's voice booming, always strong, was shouting outside, but it cracked in a way she'd never heard before. Then came the sound, a thud, then another. The kind of sound that didn't feel like something falling. It felt like someone breaking. Then the window shattered. The air turned orange, hot. Smoke slipped under the door like it was looking for her. Her name is Amara, and she remembers everything. I'm Mark Joie, and you're watching Injustice Browning. If this story already has your heart tight, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. These stories matter. These voices deserve to be heard. Back then, they lived on Stony Island Avenue, south side of Chicago, 3rd floor, end of the hall. Her father's name was Ezra Moore, a black journalist, stubborn as hell. With a pen that cut deeper than any badge, he had a way of writing things nobody wanted to read, especially not the people wearing uniforms. He published a series of articles about missing evidence, quiet payouts, black teenagers who never came home. He'd started naming names, white names. The phone had started ringing at odd hours. Watch your back. You think you're invincible, and then silence. The kind that hangs in the air before something explodes. That night, he kissed Amara on the forehead and told her to go to bed early. He was pacing, smoking, writing something he never got to finish. She didn't sleep. She stayed up listening. Then the shouting started. Then the bang. They dragged him out by the front steps, 4 of them. Not in uniform, but she saw one flash of a chain with a badge around her neck. Neighbors peeked from windows, then shut them again. The block went quiet, like the whole street had been warned ahead of time. The Molotov came next, through the window. The carpet caught first, then the curtains, then everything. The whole apartment swallowed in flame, but no news vans came. No police reports, no articles. Her father's body was found 2 blocks away, face down, ribs shattered, no book missing. Official cause, unknown injuries sustained during civil unrest. But there were no protests that night, no riots, just silence. The fire took everything. Her clothes, her toys, her baby brother's ultrasound photo, her mother's wedding dress, her father's unfinished story. Gone for years. Amara never spoke about it, not in therapy, not with family, not even with herself. She buried it under law school textbooks, internships, courtroom arguments. But the memory never left. It just waited. She's 36 now, still in Chicago, same streets, same system. She became a lawyer, civil rights, of course. Maybe she thought if she could fix enough cases, she could erase her own. Maybe she thought if she fought loud enough, the world would finally listen to what it ignored back then. But every time she walks past a burning trash can, every time she hears a loud bang in the night, she's 6 again, under that bed, holding her breath, praying for sirens that never came. The fire ended that night, but it never stopped burning in her. On paper, Amara looked whole. Civil rights attorney, partnered young, won her first major case before 30. Built like her mother, tall, sharp eyes, steel in the spine. To most people, she was exactly what they wanted to believe about progress, a success story, the proof that things had changed. But every morning, when she opened her eyes, it was still Chicago, and nothing had changed. The city wore its scars, under fresh paint, red-line neighborhoods now called up and coming, police budgets ballooning while school closures piled up like tombstones. Same stories, different packaging. Her office sat 2 blocks from the courthouse, with tall windows and a plant she couldn't keep alive. She handled cases with grit: police brutality, unlawful evictions, job discrimination, but some days, even victories felt like begging for breadcrumbs at a table her people had built. Her father's name had vanished from the city's records like he never existed. Ezra Moore, a man who had tried to shine light where power preferred darkness, and for it, he'd been buried twice, once in a box and once in silence. She never visited his grave. She couldn't. It wasn't grief that kept her away. It was shame, because all these years later, she still didn't know what really happened, still didn't know who did it, still hadn't brought anyone to justice. It was a rainy Saturday when she found the box again, down in her basement, behind old coats and half-lit memories, marked with peeling tape and the word Dad in faded black ink. She hadn't opened it in over a decade. Her hands shook when she pulled off the top. Inside, yellowing notebooks, photos, newspaper clippings, and a tape recorder that still had her father's fingerprints. She touched it like it might break. His handwriting was everywhere, curved and careful. Notes about city council meetings, names she didn't recognize, street addresses scribbled in margins. One name, though, kept showing up, circled, underlined, rewritten in red ink over and over again. David K. Rourke. Her breath caught. That name, she knew it. He was all over the news now. Clean-cut, salt and pepper hair, tough on crime rhetoric. He'd just announced his run for mayor last month, talking about reviving trust and cleaning up the city, smiling in churches, shaking hands in black neighborhoods. Amara stared at the clipping. It was dated June 1992, back when Rourke was a sergeant in the 3rd District. There were notes next to his name. Internal investigation sealed. Officer complaint disappeared. Miller family refused to speak. Her father had been chasing something big. She leaned back against the concrete wall, heart pounding. Was this it? Was this who killed her father, or had him killed? The anger came slow, like heat rising in the gut. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, controlled. The kind that doesn't burn and calcifies, hardens you, makes you sharp. She pulled out the recorder, pressed play, static. Then a voice. Ezra Moore, clear as day. They think they can rewrite history with enough silence. But the truth, she don't die easy. Her throat tightened. She hadn't heard his voice in years. And now it echoed in a basement that smelled like mildew and dust and time. She didn't know what she was chasing yet. Didn't know where it would end. But she knew one thing. David Rourke didn't belong in a mayor's office. He belonged in a courtroom. The city had buried her father, but they didn't know his daughter. Not yet. Not until now. At first, Amara thought she could build a case like any other. Files, facts, interviews, timelines. But this wasn't just law. This was a graveyard. Every lead she touched turned to dust. The police reports were doctored, pages missing, names redacted, witnesses she remembered from her childhood, gone, moved, deceased. The apartment complex on Stony Island had been torn down and turned into condos with glass, balconies, and rooftop yoga. One neighbor still lived nearby, Miss Gladys, who used to braid Amara's hair on the stoop, but even she only remembered the smoke, not the fire. You're better off letting it go, she said, gently. Ain't nothing in the ashes but ghosts. But Amara couldn't let it go, because ghosts don't knock on your door. Lies do. She started working after hours, locking her office door, piling documents across her floor like a crime scene map. And slowly, the pieces came together. Her father had been following a money trail and marked funds moving through the department budget, payouts to families who never filed formal complaints, officers transferred quietly after violent incidents, all under the oversight of one name, David Rourke. He wasn't just a rogue cop. He was the system, a climber, the kind of man who cleaned up messes by pushing people off rooftops, and called it structural repair. The deeper Amara dug, the more she realized her father had gotten too close, and someone had made sure he never published again. One night, frustrated and exhausted, she found a number scribbled in the margin of her father's notebook, just 3 digits, Ed, 728 inches with a question mark beside it. She dialed. No answer. She dialed again, left a message. I'm Ezra Moore's daughter. I need to talk to you, please. The callback came 3 days later. Raspy voice. Old man. Meet me at the pier. Midnight. Don't bring no badge. She went alone. It was cold. Wind off the lake made her collar flap like a flag. The man was already waiting. Gray beard, baseball, cap low over his brow, and eyes that hadn't slept in a decade. His name was Ed Holloway. Retired cop. Used to walk the same beat as Rourke in the early 90s. He didn't shake her hand, just nodded. You got your father's fire, he said. That same look, like truth is gonna save you. Amara didn't blink. Did you see what happened? To him, Ed sighed, looked out over the water like he was talking to something only he could see. Your father was close, he said. Too close. He found out about a house on 81st. Unofficial interrogation site. No paperwork, just a basement and bad intentions. Rourke ran it, called it the locker. That man broke more people than the system ever admitted. She felt her stomach twist. Why didn't anyone stop him? Ed smiled, bitter, because Rourke knew how to protect power. He had something on everybody, judges, chiefs, hell. Even the mayor back then owed him favors. Did he kill my father? Ed paused. For a long time? No. He didn't throw the punch, but he gave the order. The words hit like a slap. So why tell me now? He lit a cigarette with shaky fingers. Because I'm dying. And your father didn't deserve what he got. Neither do you. Amara nodded once, walked away without saying goodbye. She had what she needed. It wasn't justice. Not yet. But it was the truth. And that was where justice always begins. The first threat came in silence. A man in a Navy suit standing across the street from her office. Just standing, staring. He didn't flinch when she looked back. The second was louder. A brick through her window at 2 a.m., wrapped in paper that read, "You don't know what you're doing." She filed a report. Of course. The officer on duty nodded like he cared, then dropped the paperwork in a pile that looked like it hadn't moved in years. The third was a letter, anonymous, from the state bar. Your license to practice law is under administrative review. No explanation, no warning, just an envelope with sharp edges and colder intent. And just like that, she saw it, how they work. The machine, it doesn't come at you with fists anymore. It comes in forms and signatures and silent phone calls that end careers before they begin. Amara tried to fight it, filed counter reports, called in favors, but everything started slipping. Clients pulled out. Her name got whispered with suspicion. Her friends stopped picking up. It wasn't justice she was chasing anymore, it was survival. One night, she broke. She sat on her kitchen floor, back against the fridge, knees pulled to her chest. No tears at first, just silence. Then, like a dam cracked open, the grief came rushing in. She felt 10 years old again, hiding under the bed, hearing screams, smelling fire. And just when she thought the loneliness might bury her whole, her mother knocked on the door. She hadn't seen her in weeks. Her mother was older now, moving slower, but still carried herself, like someone who knew the weight of pain and how to live with it. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just sat down next to her daughter on the cold tile, pulled a small envelope from her purse, and held it out. "I was supposed to give you this when you turned 18, she said, "but I was afraid. I didn't want to break you before the world did." Amara took it. The paper had yellowed. Her name was written in pen, neat, deliberate. She opened it with shaking hands. It was her father's handwriting. "My Amara, if you're reading this, I didn't make it to see the woman you became, and that breaks me more than anything. But I need you to know what happened to me. It wasn't just violence. It was fear. Cowards dressed in badges and power did what they always do when a black voice refuses to whisper. I fought them with words, with light, with truth, but I always knew they might take me before I finished the story. If they do, don't let it end there. Don't become a weapon. Become a mirror. Make them see themselves. But most of all, live, love, be bigger than them. That's how we win. Not with revenge, with legacy." Amara stared at the page, tears streaking her face. Her mother rested a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to carry it all," she said, "but you do have to decide what you will carry." That night, Amara didn't sleep. She sat at her desk until the sky turned gray, rereading every page of her father's notes, organizing files, re-recording testimony. She didn't have a badge. She didn't have political pull, but she had the truth, and she had her father's voice in her ear. And this time, she wasn't stopping. She knew she'd never see a courtroom, not for this, not for what they did. There wouldn't be a trial. No judge slamming a gavel. No jury of 12 leaning in as evidence played out on screens. The system was built to shield itself, not confess. But that didn't mean she couldn't speak. That didn't mean the city couldn't hear. So Amara did. The one thing they didn't expect. She gave it all away. Every file, every note, every redacted name she'd unredacted, every check stub, every photocopy of bruised bodies and muffled complaints, all of it. She compiled it into a single folder. She called it What Was Buried, and she sent it to the press. Not just one outlet. All of them, local radio, national blogs, college newsletters. She knew the big names might ignore her, but the hungry ones, the ones who still believed in truth like a fire in the belly, they bid. It started small, a story on a community blog. Then a podcast picked it up. Then a journalist downtown wrote a feature about the black attorney, exposing the ghost files of Stony Island. And then came the microphone, a town hall meeting, packed tight, folding chairs squealing across the floor, the air thick with heat and hush. She stood at the front, alone, her voice steady, but not loud. She didn't need volume. She had truth. "My name is Amara," she said, "and when I was 10 years old, the police burned my father alive for telling the truth." The room didn't move. She held up the letter. "This is his voice. These are his words. They tried to silence him, and now they're trying to silence me." She pointed toward the back, toward the man who used to wear a badge, who now wore a tailored suit and a forced smile. David Rourke, mayoral candidate, seated with his arms crossed like this was just another public nuisance. "I'm not asking for pity," she said. "I'm demanding memory. This man ran a black site in our neighborhood. He ruined lives. He destroyed families, and now he wants your vote." Someone stood. Then another dot, and another dot. It wasn't a riot dot, it was recognition. The story caught fire. Rourke dropped out of the race within a week. Health reasons, his campaign said. But no one believed it. The pressure was too much, the questions too loud, the receipts too real. The city launched an inquiry, a shallow one, sure, the kind meant to pacify, not punish, but it was something. A door cracked open. For the first time in decades, they were saying his name, Ezra Moore, on public record, and that mattered. Amara sat on the edge of her bed one night, watching a local news anchor read a list of names linked to the buried investigation. Her father's photo flashed on screen, not a mugshot, a real one, smiling, alive. She whispered, "You see that, Daddy? It wasn't justice in a courtroom, but it was vindication in the streets." She didn't win, but she made them flinch, and sometimes that's how revolutions start, with truth told loud enough, with pain carried long enough, with one voice that refused to stay quiet. The lot was smaller than she remembered. Funny how memory does that, makes things bigger than they were, louder than they sounded. But the silence here, that hadn't changed. It still wrapped around the corners of Stony Island like a ghost with nowhere else to go. Amara stood there alone, just her, a paper bag in her hand, and a sapling in the other. No press, no crowd, no microphones, only sky. Only wind. She stepped into the space where the front porch used to be. The wood had turned to ash long ago, but in her mind, she could still hear it creak under her father's boots. She could see him sitting on the steps with a notebook in his lap and sweat on his brow, writing like time was chasing him, because it was. She knelt down, opened the bag, and let the ashes spill gently into the dirt. Some caught the wind, some stayed, sinking into the soil like whispers finding their way home. Then she dug, just a small hole, just deep enough for new life. The tree wasn't much yet, just a baby oak, thin and stubborn, like her. She placed it carefully, covered its roots, and stood up slow. She pressed both hands into the earth when she was done, not for ceremony, just because it felt right. This was where the fire started. Now it would be where something else grew. Not forgiveness. That wasn't the point, but continuation. Legacy. She sat on the curb for a while, letting the late sun stretch shadows across the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed. Another email. Probably another reporter. She let it ring for the first time in months. She wasn't thinking about cases or names or headlines. She was thinking about her father's laugh, his terrible dancing, the way he kissed her forehead like it was a sacred thing. He wasn't just a symbol. He wasn't just a story. He was her dad. And now, he was part of this ground. Part of this city. And maybe part of the fight still to come. She took one last look at the tree. Someday it would tower over this block, shade the sidewalk, crack concrete with its roots. She hoped kids would climb it, carve their names into it, sit under it and dream big, even in a world that tried to make black dreams small. Before she left, she spoke softly, not to the tree, not to the sky, but to anyone listening. If they ever tried to silence you, speak anyway. If they ever made you feel invisible, become so big they can't look away. If they burned it down, plant something. My name is Amara Moore, and I'm still here. I'm Mark Joie. This is Injustice Browin. If this story moves something in you, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and speak the truth even when it shakes, especially when it shakes. Because somewhere out there, someone is listening, and maybe they're just waiting for you.